everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and in this video I am excited to share with you some amazing information about one of my most loved childhood plants to identify, and that is shavegrass, or more commonly known as horsetail. Now, my dad put shavegrass in his book From the Shepherd's Purse, so of course those 48 plants made it into my book, Be Your Own Shaman. I doubled the content, but shavegrass or horsetail is one of those plants that just has a special memory for me, because there were times in my childhood where we would be out with my dad and even my mom. We'd be up in the mountains having cookouts or just playing up in the mountains, and we would run across shavegrass. And there were some really fun, quirky things about it that we used to do. In fact, we used to call it puzzle grass because it comes in little segments up the stalk. You can pull it apart and divide it. In fact, there was a time when I was a senior in high school, my dad used to do survival hikes with groups of college students from BYU. And I got to go on one of those trips when I was a senior in high school. And what my dad did, which was so cool, he would be the field guide where he would show you what plants were edible, what plants were not edible, what parts of the plant you use. And we would actually, for these 4 days we were on this hike and this survival hike, we didn't take food with us. We had to find water and we had to live off the land. And even though I'd had those memories of this plant with my dad when I was little, when I was on this trip with him, he actually was showing the people, and myself included, how you would take this plant, separate, get a little thing, fold it in half, and use it as a toothbrush. Because there are some really cool properties to this plant that are abrasive. And it's been used to clean pots. It's been used to, scrape different things because it's super high in silica, which is like a really ancient kind of glass-like substance, which is really cool. Now, one of the things I love most about this plant is that this plant is 300 million years old. This is very, very ancient, and it's got some really cool properties. It's got some really cool health benefits, but there's some cautions as well. So I'm excited to share so much information about this very much loved for me plant that I grew up with. I would never grow it in my yard, and I will tell you why in a minute. But this is one of those plants that deserves a look on your radar, and maybe the possibility of adding it every now and again into your supplement routine. So the information that I share with you is not meant to be medical advice. This is just meant to entertain and educate you. So please do your own due diligence and make sure that you know what you're doing when you add anything into your supplement routine when it comes to the plant kingdom, because it is rich, it is vast, it is such a beautiful, beautiful space to lean into, to learn about, and to incorporate these things with care into the supplement routine or into the diet of yourself and your family. So I'm going to share with you first some of the health benefits that I've been very familiar with and that I have loved horsetail for. And I have dipped in and out of using horsetail only for short periods of time. And just revisiting this information and doing some deeper research has made me want to add it into my routine, maybe once every 6 months, just go through either drinking the tea or adding a supplement either in tincture form or in tea form, okay? So when this plant is used appropriately with respect, it has been used traditionally and valued for its support in the body's structure and repair process. Okay, this is where the silica comes in. So here is a list of its most well-known notable health benefits. Okay, it supports your hair, your skin, and your nails due to its naturally occurring high silica content, okay, which contributes to collagen formation and structural integrity. So think about that: skin, hair, nails, bones, really important. And things like celery has silica too, but horsetail is one of those herbs and plants that has a very high content of silica. It promotes bone health by helping improve mineralization and potentially supporting bone density when combined with adequate nutrition. That's the most important piece. You can't just support and take supplements and then not eat a good balanced diet of food that supports the herbs that we take, right? It acts as a gentle diuretic which assists the body in releasing excess fluid and supporting kidney and urinary tract function. It also aids in tissue repair and wound healing through mild, astringent, and antimicrobial properties. It also provides antioxidant compounds that help protect cells from antioxidant stress, and it may even support connective tissue strength, including ligaments and tendons, making it a traditional herb that's used in recovery from strain and injury. Now, there are a couple of species of this plant. The one you want to look for, if you decide to do a product that you purchase, whether it's capsule, tea, or tincture, is Equisetum arvense. And the one it's typically confused with is Equisetum hyemale, and that's spelled Hyemale. So when you are looking for a supplement of horsetail, you want to make sure of a couple of things that should be on the label. First of all, you want it to say the Latin name, which is the Equisetum arvense. And I'll put that below this video so that you can see how that's spelled. Okay. You also want it to indicate what part of the plant is used, and you want the dried aerial parts. Okay. You want third-party testing, especially for heavy metals, because a lot of plants, especially ones that have a very deep, intricate root system, which horsetail does, you want to make sure that there's heavy metal testing, okay? And you don't want anything that says it's a proprietary blend. So if you're getting just horsetail, it should not say proprietary blend. That means they don't have to tell you what's in it. It's proprietary, it's secret, and sometimes you might get a blend of herbs that say something that has 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 different herbs in it. You can say proprietary blend as far as it's not going to tell you the exact percentage, but it should tell you the parts of the plant that's used, and quite possibly you want to look for something that tells you the species, because you want that Equisetum arvense, okay? It is very important that it says that. So you need to know that even when you take a high quality horsetail, it's not for long-term use without breaks, and it should be avoided during pregnancy and if you have kidney issues. Okay, that's just something really important to pay attention to. I always love the question about, can you grow this in your yard? Now, the short answer for growing horsetail or shave grass in your yard, the short answer is yes. But this is something, me personally, I would never grow it in my yard. Okay. And I've got some really good reasons to share with you why. And this is something that my dad always said, this is not something you ever want to put in our herb garden or grow in our flower garden or grow to have even a, ornamental, because will be a permanent structure of a plant in your yard, and it's extremely invasive because those root systems just go. In fact, if you plant a horsetail plant in your yard, it will start to spread out first very, very strategically and fast underneath. And then all these shoots will start popping up. In fact, one of my favorite hikes here in Utah, in the Salt Lake Valley, I go up this canyon called Mill Creek, and there's a beautiful hike called Grandeur Peak. It's one of my favorites. And one of the reasons I love this hike so much, besides all the other things about it, it truly is grandeur. You can see the whole Salt Lake Valley when you get to the top. But there's a spot where there's a creek running down all the way from the top. It goes all the way down, but there's a spot along the path about halfway up where there's a massive patch of horsetail. And it always reminds me of my dad when I pass by. In fact, I will typically always pick off a stalk and I will just kind of pluck it apart because it does come in these beautiful, cool little segments. It is such an ancient plant that it is truly amazing. So here's the reality check. If you decide that you want to plant, or maybe not, horsetail in your yard. Okay, so you need to know that it's extremely invasive and it's very hard to remove. Okay, it spreads via really deep, stubborn rhizomes. So the roots go down, and the rhizomes are root systems that shoot out along right underneath the surface of the ground, which is really common for plants like Osha. Osha is a rhizome plant. Bloodroot is rhizome. So horsetail will shoot out this massive network, and then it will just start shooting up little shoots everywhere. And if you have the right place, it can look really beautiful. Okay. So think of it less like a plant and more like a permanent resident. Once you plant horsetail, you will have it. And the thing is, if you live in a residential area, maybe you're close, you have other neighbors that are close, this would probably be something that would not be very nice to plant if you have neighbors who don't want something super invasive growing in their yard. Okay. So it's something to be respectful of your neighbors about. So if you do want to grow it, here are some of the conditions. It loves wet soil. Okay. It thrives in ponds and poor drainage areas. So like places that are like irrigation runoff. In fact, that's why it grows right next to this creek that kind of meanders through a part of the trail. That's why it grows so much there, because it likes wet soil. Okay. So if your yard has a soggy spot, horsetail will love it. Okay. It likes full sun. You'll get its strongest growth if you have full sun. And if you have a place that's partial shade, it's still fine. Again, my suggestion would be to not plant it, but I would also suggest possibly putting it in a pot. Or if you decide to plant it in the ground, put a garden beds that you can get. I have a few of them in my yard. They're above ground, but you can put one under, kind of bury it in the ground, and then you can put your horsetail in that, where it doesn't have an opportunity to go past the metal edges of your metal planter. Okay. So it's the soil it needs. It's not picky at all. It will take sand, clay, or gravel. It even tolerates really low nutrient soil and compacted soil. So it would take clay or any type of, it can tolerate really poor soil. Okay. It survives harsh winters. Okay. So it's very cold hardy. And it's native across much of the Northern Hemisphere. Okay. And I've seen it in the East Coast on hikes I've done. I've actually even seen it in places I've hiked in Europe, in the mountainous areas. Okay. So the best way to control it is to grow it in containers. So pots or buried tubs or lined beds. Okay. That's the best way to do it, because the roots can spread and they can grow several feet deep. And this is where here's the thing, even tiny fragments can regrow. So if you plant horsetail or you move somewhere where there is horsetail present and you decide you want to take it out because it's invasive and maybe you want to plant other things, even a tiny fragment that is left in the soil, it doesn't matter. It will grow. Because remember I said this plant is 300 million years old. They can actually date this back to the pre-dinosaur eras. This is just a really old, ancient, really cool plant. Okay, so you never want to plant it directly in open ground unless you want it to spread permanently and you're okay with it becoming dominant. It will become the dominant plant in your yard and it will be permanent. So if I haven't already discouraged you from growing horsetail, hopefully this will. Unless you really have the area for it, you want it as ornamental and you live out in a place where you have a few acres that you can fill up with a beautiful ornamental grass and it can kind of be in a natural habitat, that would be a really good place to potentially grow horsetail. So you want to make sure the species that you grow, here's the thing, if you want something ornamental, the species you want is the Equisetum hyemale. If you want something ornamental, just remember, if you get that species, that is not the one that you want to consume. So you're getting it simply for ornamental use. The reason people will plant that is because it's kind of bamboo-like. And if you've ever planted bamboo, you know that you have the same issues with bamboo. It can be kind of invasive and it grows and it's way tall and it's very hard to get rid of. In fact, on my street, at the very end of the street, there probably about 10 years ago, so when some people moved into the house at the end of the street, they planted bamboo. And I can tell every season that they're trying to get rid of it. And they're struggling because this also is from just what I see and having never planted or grown bamboo, it looks to me like they're trying to get rid of it, but they're struggling. So it is popular in modern landscaping, this species of horsetail, but it can be easier to manage than the other species, but it still spreads. Okay. For herbal use, you want the Equisetum arvense. It's smaller and bushier, and it is used in traditional medicine. That is the traditional species. There's a lot more tips about growing horsetail, but I think that pretty much, if you are a person who's interested in that, you can do a little bit further research and strategically put it in your yard and go from there. In fact, if you love horsetail and you grow it successfully without it being fully invasive, I would love to hear what you have found and what you love about it, because it is a really beautiful plant. Every time I see it, I have these deep memories of my childhood, me and my siblings, just gathering handfuls of this, tearing them apart, and then that beautiful memory of using a little section, folding it in half, and my dad showing me and all these college students on this survival hike how to use this as a toothbrush from Mother Nature. Really, really cool. So then what I did is I thought, okay, this is a plant that is 300 million years old. So I wanted to find some old, esoteric, magical, mystical uses that horsetail is famous for. So I found some really cool stuff that I'm excited to share with you. Okay, so because horsetail looks alien and ancient, it's picked up some unusual symbolic meanings across different cultures. Okay, so horsetail doesn't behave like a typical plant. It doesn't have any flowers and it has no seeds. Instead, it reproduces through spores, which is really cool. And if you think about how ancient that plant is, it makes sense, right? So in European lore, this made it a liminal plant. It's associated with thresholds, transitions, and the boundary between visible and invisible realms. Really beautiful. Now, it's also known as a protective and a cleansing herb. So in traditional folk magic, it's used in protective washes, especially in your homes. It's associated with purification, scrubbing away negative energy, and that was likely inspired by its literal use as a scrubber, because people did use it as a natural scrub before the modern world came in, and now we have things that scrub our pots and pans a little bit more efficiently, a little bit differently, but it was known as a scrubber. So that's why I believe it was associated with purification. Now, there's also an elemental association with earth and water, which I really love this. Because it thrives in wet soil, but it contains the mineral silica, it often is symbolically linked to earth, which means structure, bones, and endurance, and water, which is flow, adaptability, and healing, which I really love. So it's also known as the bone plant, okay? And there's a symbolism to this. So its silica content led to its association with strengthening the bones, structural integrity, and inner resilience. So in esoteric herbalism, it's sometimes used in rituals that focus on rebuilding after hardship, stability, and grounding. And if you've been watching some of these videos I've been doing for a while now, there are so many plants that have beautiful meaning in what they do for us emotionally, spiritually, in relationships, in the way we transition into this life and transition out of this life. And these plants have walked with us as humans for centuries. And in the case of horsetail, for literally 300 million years. Let that sink in for a minute. In the scheme of Mother Nature, that's a blip. That's a blip in time, right? So there's a connection of horsetail in ancient times. And this is what I found. Because it predates flowering plants, some traditions treat it as a carrier of primordial energy and a plant tied to deep time memory. I really love that. In modern spiritual practices, it's sometimes used for meditation on ancestry and evolution, and it practices focus on longevity and endurance. Now, it's also known as an energetic scrub brush, so not just in the physical, but energetic. So here's what I found. Its abrasive nature translated symbolically into removing energetic residue and clearing stagnant emotional states. So beautiful, right? It's one of those rare cases where physical property and symbolic meaning is very, very direct. Those are direct. The symbolic meaning and the physical meaning are direct. Here's a little bit of a reality check, and this is how I'm going to end this. Okay, so these associations come from European folk traditions and modern herbal spiritual systems. They are cultural interpretations, okay? Not scientifically validated effects. But this is one of the things where we get to tune in, we get to hear this magical, mystical, beautiful traditional cultural use that these plants had, and we get to let that enhance the modern benefits and the modern scientific research that now comes in with some of these beautiful plants. So they're part of the plant's long human history. So again, like I said, I would love to know what your experience is with horsetail. Have you added it into your supplement routine because of what you've learned about it? And are you being careful that you get the right species, the right plant parts, and that you're giving breaks between when you use it? This is something that me personally, here we are in the middle of 2026, I am going to find a super good source of horsetail or shave grass, and I'm going to start adding it strategically, probably into my tea routine because of the silica, for what it does for bones and what it does for hair and nails and skin, that naturally occurring beautiful silica. So thanks for tuning in today, guys, and we will see you in the next one.